This is the 3 a.m. conversation that you really want to be a fly on the wall for. This is the Sleepless Knights podcast, hosted by Mr. Lobo of Cinema Insomnia and my producer Paul Sanders of BESTOW TV. Those who listen know it's unlike all those other podcasts. This one is for us night people. We obsess on pop culture, we talk movies, talk shop, get weird, do interviews, answer your questions. We take you to the airport and to the laundromat. Okay, well, sometimes we get lost, but we promise you that we will go where no podcast has gone before. Dare you put down as little as $1 American and support our next show? We're getting it ready for you now. All you can hear for $1 or more an episode. Please join us on Patreon. Patreon.com/Sleepless Knights Podcast, all one word, SLEEPLESSKNIGHTS Only one D in podcast, even though we emphasize the odd in our pODDcast. We want normal people with real jobs to find us. Sleepless Knights Podcast on Patreon.
Once again, we'd like to thank all of our Patreon supporters. Our executive producer for tonight's episode is Anita Rivnik. Thanks again, Anita. All systems go.
Attention, Sleepless Knights. Thank you for consuming this OSI 74 product broadcast, live from the Black Knight satellite. For optimum performance and safety, your host, Mr. Lobo, asks that you please listen to these instructions carefully. When in a hospital or other healthcare facility, observe the restrictions on the use of electronic devices. Switch off before boarding an aircraft to prevent interference with communications systems. Do not operate this device in the presence of flammable gases or fumes, chemical plants, or where blasting operations are in progress. Always listen hands-free while driving a vehicle. Failure to observe these instructions may lead to immediate termination. It's time now for the show to begin. Thank you. Have a very pleasant evening.
All Hallows Eve. The wind shrieks through the trees. Children laugh. And pumpkins grin. And the unmistakable... how do you make a grin sound?
How do you make a pumpkin grin sound? How does that work?
That's your job, okay?
All right.
Children laugh. And pumpkins grin.
Oh.
And the unmistakable surge of evil is felt. As darkness falls, welcome, children of all ages, to Mr. Lobo's Schlocktober. Mr. Lobo's Schlocktober Spookabration Fest, Part 2.
Oh wait,
the night he came home again for the last time.
We did a Part 1. We're still doing this crap?
We're still doing it. Yeah, of course. Don't we love spooky stuff? Sure we do. Why not?
Sure we do.
I like fantasy. I like a little fantasy in my spooky stuff. I think we talked about this before. I'm not as much into like the true crime kind of stuff. Like, for whatever reason, and I'm going to be real sexist, I think ladies love murder. I think ladies have no problem with dead bodies and watching just autopsies on television. I'm a little sheepish. I like fantasy violence.
Sure you do, Mr. Lobo.
Look, yes, that's right. That corny of fantasy violence, where we're doing bad Bela Lugosi impressions, or was that the Carlos Borla?
I'm insulted. That is not Bela Lugosi.
Boris Karloff impression.
Yeah, get that right. Don't
oh yeah, we don't want to.
Don't flip your vowels.
Yes.
No, I wouldn't be your vowels.
Want to watch that? Yes,
Consonants.
he who shall not be named.
He would show up.
Yes, don't say it into the mirror 3 times.
Don't say it nor spray it.
Mm-hmm. Don't say it. Don't spray it. A lot of, I feel like in the 90s there was kind of this, well, first of all, the 80s were so oversaturated with slasher movies. I mean, every holiday you could think of, every kind of stupid mask you could think of, every kind of backwoods, hillbilly, inbred family you could think of, every kind of, big, dumb, special needs guy with gardening tools. All of that happened to such an excess in the 80s that in the 90s there was kind of like a, I don't want to say it flatlined, but I think a lot of studios just dumped all their interests in those kind of films. They didn't want to distribute those kind of films. They didn't want to put out those kind of films. And so for a lot of horror fans, you really kind of had to hunt around for stuff to watch. Most of the stuff that was enjoyed in the 90s was stuff on VHS from the 80s, with the exception of things like Tales from the Crypt on television. Mm-hmm. Now, was the Beetlejuice cartoon the late 80s or was it the early 90s?
Might have been on that line.
Right on the line. Boy, what a great show that was.
If you say so, I've never watched it.
You never watched the cartoon?
Aside from what you force-fed me, no.
Oh, all right.
Tied me to the chair, had those eye things, putting in the eye drops, just like they did in Clockwork Banana.
Clockwork Banana. That's the apes version of Clockwork Orange. So, one of the directions they went is they kind of did some higher brow kind of thrillers, which makes me think of Silence of the Lambs. Do you do an impression of Hannibal Lecter?
Yeah, hold on, give me a second. What was the Clarice, right?
Yes, Clarice. Is that him with the mask on?
Yeah. I mean, you can't hear him very well.
He's on the dolly with the mask.
With the mask on the other side of the plexiglass.
Furniture dolly, strapped to the furniture dolly with the weird half mask over his mouth. That was kind of an iconic thing. I think that was probably one of the few iconic masks that were worn as Halloween costumes that were from the 90s, right?
Yeah, I guess. I mean, you can kind of recycle the hockey face mask and just cut it in half, and you kind of had the Hannibal Lecter mask.
Yeah, it is the hockey face mask. Cut it. This is hockey face is our version of Jason Voorhees.
We don't want them after us.
Is the
Dollar Store Jason?
The Department of Human Consumption is going to have problems with.
Yeah, because Dollar Store Jason has the copyright on all that stuff. So now
Dollar Store Jason has the copyright, so now we got to call him Hockey Face.
Got to call him Hockey Face. So we got to use our in-universe term for him.
All right. So after Hockey Face and what? Nightmare Fred.
It was Laserface and Hockey Face and Sharp Fingers.
Sharp Fingers. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yes, Sharp Fingers. Oh Lord. Anyway, after the big three, which would be now, what about Michael Myers? What do you call him? And don't say Austin Powers. Groovy baby.
You want to see my bits? Just imagine him standing there in the middle of the freaking woods, like stalking the people. Like, oh, I see my bits, baby. Yeah, baby.
Yeah. No. Anyhow. The characters of Halloween, Friday the 13th, The Nightmare Before Elm Street. After those, we did have, like I said, I think Hannibal Lecter was probably one of those breakthrough characters that people really, especially the half mask version of him. I think that's kind of like.
Wouldn't you say that's kind of also more mainstream kind of thing?
Yeah,
more thing. Like my mom was into that,
That was an Oscar-nominated horror film. I guess it's not. Again, is it a horror film? That's a whole nother question. But I thought that was the last year that I was really interested in the Oscars, because we had an animated film. I believe Beauty and the Beast was nominated that year. And then a horror film, or at least a horror thriller, or a thriller with horror affects, such as Silence of the Lambs. To me, I thought, oh, wow, they're really opening things up for the kinds of movies that could be considered for Best Picture. And then I feel like after that, they kind of clamped down again, and it was the same kind of like Oscar bait, sort of out of Africa, places in the heart, Field of Dreams kind of crap that usually gets that kind of attention. So like I said, that was kind of an exciting time, and that was a very well-made thriller with a very popular serial killer. Going back to, even though there's nothing magical about him, I felt like Anthony Hopkins brought a lot of dynamic to that character, even though there was nothing really supernatural about him.
No, he just ate people.
He just ate people. Cannibals are fun, though. Cannibals are still fun. Who is calling me during the podcast? They should know better.
Oh, wait, that's me. Hold on. Answer it. I might talk to you.
Can't do it right now. I'm gonna turn my ringer off.
All right, well, you still get my text, right? If you're not going to answer my phone call.
You don't need to text me. We're talking.
Oh, okay.
And Silence of the Lambs had that romance too, right? Where it was almost not really a romance, but kind of. It kind of had a little bit. I think they were definitely flirting with the sexy aspects of,
because I guess when you go, by the time you get to Red Dragon and stuff like that, it was more seductive, and like Clarice is the one that he couldn't kill. And
in the same way, I think sort of a romantic horror film franchise, I guess. I didn't really see the second one, but Candyman kind of has that too.
Yeah.
Where Virginia Madsen and Tony Todd as the Candyman.
I am the writing on the wall. I am the chewed bubble gum under the drinking fountain. I am the note passed in gym.
That was a good Darkwing Duck impression.
Candyman was this urban legend, and he had a hook for a hand, so a literal urban legend, and so urban that it was, it was an urban legend and it was a urban legend. They kind of, went kind of literal with that. So they have Candyman and Virginia Madsen. They kind of have this connection, which is almost a romance. Those two characters are so connected that they have that bond that is almost romantic, which is the same as Silence of the Lambs. But I think Candyman was another breath of fresh air for
Are we
horror.
allowed to say Silence of the Lambs? Shouldn't we say like the muting of farm animals?
Muting of the ewes.
Muting of the ewes. Okay, and action.
They almost had a romance in the Candyman. Now, can we say Candyman?
Yeah, I mean, will the Willy Wonka people come after us if we keep saying
Maybe.
it?
How about Sweetie Guy?
Okay, Sweetie Todd.
So in Sweetie Todd... So in Sweetie Todd, they had the same kind of dynamic as they did in, was it Muting of the Ewes? God damn it. Why do we have to talk like this? This is completely ruining this conversation. What was interesting is that it was a breath of fresh air. No one had seen a character like Candyman before, and it was very rare to, they kind of took some chances with it. And it was a pretty good horror film with a brand new, are they serial killers? I feel like there's slasher, right? A brand new slasher character, brand new franchise. And I think that kind of jump-started the sort of wave into the later 90s where we're almost acknowledging this as a genre. It kind of like the self-awareness that was to come in things like Scream. And I guess we'll kind of talk about Scream when we not Scream, not that Scream, but the movie series Scream and other 90s-ish things when we return with Mr. Lobo's Schlocktober Spookabration Fest 2020.
It's Fright Fest at Six Flags. Come out for ghosts, ghouls, and one screaming coaster after another. Get your discount tickets online at sixflags.com. Six Flags. It's playtime.
This is Mr. Lobo, and we are talking about Scream! The movie Scream, which, wasn't a big favorite of mine, but certainly made a huge impression in the horror community and in the culture, and definitely gave us another one of those go-to masks, just like the, I would say, Hannibal Lecter gave us the weird half mask, and then, of course, Scream gave us Ghostface. Oh, and I think the great thing about the half mask and the ghost face, which is the same as those other masks, is they're easily knock-offable, right? There's the dollar store version of every single one of those characters. And I think that kind of opens it up. If you have people selling bootlegs on the back, bootleg masks and claws out of the back of the van.
Ow!
Uh-oh.
Ow!
What's happening over there? Paul, are you all right?
Stop eating me. Okay.
Paul, what's happening? Who's eating you?
I'm being attacked by Bryce Lee, the space kitty.
God. Is that what that bell ringing is?
Yes, he decided to eat my headphones and claw up my gut, so.
This is why my cats are getting upset over here.
Yeah.
The garbage cat is giving me the 1,000-yard stare. So for some reason, I think she can hear your kitty also. We were talking about, you all right? Are you remove the, not declawed, but remove the claws from yourself?
I think I'll just, once the pus builds up, I'll be fine. I'll be all right.
Just waiting for the pus to build up.
Just waiting for the pus.
Yep, that's right.
That should be on a t-shirt, waiting for the pus.
That's right.
I remember Ghostface even they wouldn't just stop with that one screaming face that it was from the normal one. I remember like the dollar store Ghostface, like their faces were always in like different positions and poses, and some had eyes and some didn't have eyes, but it was something that was so easily knock-offable.
Yeah, well, it's kind of the Scream from the famous painting too.
Right.
The Scream.
Right. Which is probably why they can't necessarily copyright it,
but that also kind of gives it some power because it's bigger than just that movie. It's something that's part of the culture, so I kind of like that aspect of it. But yeah, going into the film itself, and what we alluded to earlier is that in the 90s we got kind of very self-referential because we have a genre that has so many entries and there's so many movies that when you're making a movie like that, you're not surprising anybody because there's been 100 other movies with the same premise.
Right.
And so the only way not the only way, but one way to keep that going is to embrace that format and to call out what kind of genre you're in. And in Scream, they definitely did that by the numbers, where they literally said, these are the tropes of a slasher movie. These are the characters that are always in the slasher movie. There's the virgin and the stoner kid and the smart one and the whatever. And these are the, this is the ABCs of a slasher movie. And then they proceed to follow that pattern of the slasher movie in the slasher movie. So very self-referential. And Wes Craven had we had said that Wes Craven had kind of already gotten into this territory a little bit with the last Nightmare on Elm Street film.
Right. It seems like he kind of just he was just cashing in early with New Nightmare.
Final Nightmare is a different one.
Final
right?
Nightmare is a different one, and Freddy's Dead is the last, of the Nightmare on Elm Street movies. But New Nightmare was the first one dealing with Freddy as a kind of a demon instead of an actual character, and
right. He was
being
self-referential.
Self-referential.
He was living inside the script, and was he forcing them to make another movie? Was the premise?
Something like, yeah. I think he had to write him in the movie, or else he would come to Earth. So he had to keep writing the scripts. Didn't Stephen King do something similar?
Probably.
I think he had a similar thing
right.
where he had to write it, keep writing, or the demons would come. Or maybe he was just on coke and that was just a press release. I don't know.
I feel like it's a furthering. I think the success of New Nightmare probably maybe opened up, and where I'm just completely talking out of my ass here, but opened up that whole idea of being self-referential and talking about the things that always happen in horror movies, and flowing with those cliches and tropes and being fully aware of them and embracing them. Scream I always thought of as kind of funny, like sort of it had some humor to it, and it was self-aware. But then I guess that wasn't funny and self-aware enough, right? Because they made all those what is it? Where they
Scream Again, I Scream on Your Grave.
No.
I Scream, You Scream, We All Scream for Ice Cream.
The comedy ones with the Wayans brothers. I think was always
Scary Movie.
A Scary Movie, and then Scary Movie kind of morphed into A Haunted House, right?
I think they did like the first 2 or 3, and then one of the Zuckers did one of them, and then it went on to, then that's when they started doing the epic movie and everything else. And it went to kind of this guy that's kind of like similar to, he's the comedy's version of Asylum, but not as good. And that's where they just kind of just started. They basically make movies based off of the trailers so that they can drop them before the movie comes out, and they're hip and with it, but then just like labels their...
Yeah, it dates the movies too. But yeah, they just sort of like, whatever the hot topic is, they just have a movie that comes out like right before. But is that like Not Another Teen Movie and those sorts of things?
Yeah. Not Another Teen Movie, epic movie, superhero movie, all those. They were basically, it was, I think it's that guy moving forward. He made all those. I think the Zuckers tried to take a stab at it as well, which I would love the Zuckers to go through with it. And ironically, I watched Scary Movie 4. And I'm just hating it. I'm just absolutely hating this movie. And I'm like, this is like, I was counting, and it's like 3 seconds to a joke, 3 seconds another joke, 3 seconds another joke. Every 3 seconds there was a joke, and it's just like, oh, come on. I'm like, I think I'm just going to skip to the Zuckers movie. And then I looked it up on IMDb, and I'm like, oh, this is the Zuckers movie. Seriously?
How disappointing. How far we've fallen from Airplane and Top Secret.
It was only one. I think it was Jerry
Hot
Zucker.
Shots.
Is it Jerry Zucker? What are the 2 Zucker brothers?
That's too bad. I mean, maybe, who knows what the situation was making that movie.
I don't know.
I thought the first Scary Movie was funny. I mean, I do like the Wayans brothers. I did like, I mean, in Living Color was brilliant.
I'm Gonna Get You, Sucker, I used to love. I love that movie.
Sucker is amazing. Damon Wayans and who's the older brother? Like, he's the one who's kind of like the mastermind of In Living Color. Scream was already self-aware and kind of funny already.
Right.
So it was sort of weird how they ended up trying to make a whole nother franchise against another franchise. So a parody franchise. It's kind of hard to keep a franchise going as a parody, I would think. So they pretty much used that platform to make fun of every horror movie, really.
Right.
Whether it had to do with the slasher or not. They just kind of just sampled all over the place.
Well, I think that's where like
but-
all the other Nada movies kind of spun out from, because it kind of got to the point where Scary Movie was just making fun of everything, anything and everything. They were making fun of like Apple commercials, Macintosh commercials. That's so dated because at this point in time nobody knows what that commercial is.
Yeah, those things they weren't made to last. They're certainly not evergreen humor. They're certainly of their time. And then I think probably one of the best and most self-aware movies, and I guess this gets us out of the 90s really, but is more current, is Cabin in the Woods. I feel like Cabin in the Woods took the essence of Scream and kind of compounded it.
Right.
And where it's sort of like it's gone beyond just tropes and cliches. This is just another day at the office,
right?
For those guys at the control room who have to unleash holy hell on teenagers on a weekly basis. Every weekend they're releasing a different evil on unsuspecting teenagers going into the woods, and that's what's really funny, because I think any person who spends any time on Netflix has read the description of 6 teenagers go into the woods and ... So we really are very familiar with all those tropes, so much more than we ever were. Whereas I think that with Scream, we were kind of cluing people in that a pattern even existed. By the time we got to Cabin in the Woods, everyone is aware that this pattern exists, and we're just kind of making fun of it.
Right.
All right. So speaking of self-referential, we're gonna go and refer to these messages, and we'll be back with more of Mr. Lobo's Schlocktober Spookorama Festival and stuff 2020.
Visit our friends at horrornews.net, a popular horror genre site covering all aspects of the horror industry, plus paranormal, cult, fantasy, and extreme action. Great articles, interviews, trailers, and more. You can find it all at horrornews.net. That's horrornews.net.
We're back with the Cinema Insomnia's Fest 2020 Part 2.
Wow, that was the most painful butchering of the title yet.
I could do it like Hannibal Lecter. Better? Worse?
Yeah.
Thumbs up, thumbs down?
I don't know. How would Robin Williams
He would do it. Because he's dead.
That's rough. That got dark.
Speaking of dark, do we reference the fact that Cabin in the Woods is like so memeable to the point now that it's become a 2020 reference? That whole
it's an
ice
analogy,
store?
right, for this year.
Yes. All right. Who had flying sharks? Flying sharks!
The dry erase board, right? All right, yeah. Okay, flying sharks. Yep. Mm-hmm. Volcano goblins. Who had volcano goblins? All right.
Every day. It's like that comes up.
Killer
that shows
unicorn.
Up. Killer unicorn.
Yeah. And I think that, we have so much absurdity happening on this planet right now that people would love the idea that it's just a control room of a bunch of like government nerds, flipping switches and making these things happen to us.
To appease the gods.
To appease the gods. That's right. It was a ritual, but it was a ritual that was standardized to the point where they had a whole agency that was running it.
And now, do you think that Cabin in the Woods took the subject matter more seriously than Scream? Like, I feel like as Scream goes on, as the sequels go on, they kind of start referencing themselves. Well, Scream 2 kind of references even to the point where you can get the scary mask. Like, everybody can wear that mask now and everything. And that her story of part 1 becomes a movie in part 2 and a book and everything else.
I think what's interesting is that I guess Scream became more referential of itself.
Right. They refer to itself more so down the line, whereas the other one seems a little bit, it seems to take it sort of seriously.
Yeah, the movie itself is I guess they're more reverent to this is a real thing that's really happening, and not, we're not in a movie, but we're certainly embracing all of these cliches. So yeah, I guess in some ways yes, in some ways no. More serious, less serious, but definitely referential in both ways, and certainly ways that people, I think the more horror movies you've watched, the more you enjoy those movies.
Because I feel even like in Scream, as the series goes on, like Sydney becomes more of a rock star as it goes on. She's popular because of the events of the first movie, as it was taken as if that was her real life, even though it was a movie.
I agree with you. I think it's
but it was real life. But it was a movie. But it was real life.
But it was a real life. But it was a movie. It was a real life. Yeah, I think it's weird because I feel like the Scream movies became to reference themselves more, whereas Cabin in the Woods is still referencing movies.
Right.
So now it's because I think the Scream movies started echoing their own success.
Right.
Which is a different kind of reference than, hey, this is a genre of movies that we like, and this is this is what happens in those horror movies, and this is if you do this, then you're going to cause this.
Right. But spoilers, Cabin in the Woods.
So we spoiled it. How many movies have we spoiled on this podcast?
Listen, if you haven't watched Cabin in the Woods by now, you're never going to watch Cabin in the Woods.
Is that how you feel?
That's how I feel.
All right.
Which, by the way, I haven't seen Cabin in the Woods. How is it?
It's good. I saw it at a drive-in, and I saw it with a movie that was not a horror movie. This is a thing that no one ever talks about, but I really can't stand a bait-and-switch horror movie. We saw a movie, I think it was called Quiet House, where you think it's a horror movie, but it's really like, oh no, she was raped as a child and she mentally blocked this out. And so we think something supernatural happened, but it really is not supernatural at all. It's just a drama. And that's happened with a few. I think there's another one like I don't know if it's called, is that American Horror? No, the American Horror Story is a TV show. There was another one that I saw where it was the same thing, and she was raped, and it was her father was raping her, and so she created this in her mind to protect herself or whatever. So
Sucker Punch.
Sucker Punch, yeah. So it just I really hate that bait and switch where, and Dixie really hates it, where they've got the tropes of a horror film to promote it, but then when you go to see it, they pull the rug out from under you. Most famously, well, I don't know about most famously, but the one that really comes to mind is remember when Slender Man was really popular, the urban legend.
Was it ever popular?
Well, yeah, sure, Slender Man was popular. You don't think it was popular? Are we debating whether that was popular? Young people reading creepypastas. I don't know if the audience should know what creepypastas are, but I'll quickly explain. Creepypasta, of course.
Our audience might be too old to know what a creepypasta
is. Early internet term, early internet spin on copy paste, and so basically it was a bunch of urban legends, like very repeatable stories that were kind of spooky, campfire tales for the most part, that kind of hit the internet and were spread around. And that's where the term creepypasta comes from, is because they're all copy-paste stories. And we don't really know who, in most cases, we don't know who originated those stories. But Slender Man was this like weird, creepy guy with long arms and no face, and supposedly he would remove your organs or whatever. Or if you saw him in a picture, he would come after you or whatever. The same crap that all those urban legends have. Don't say his name 3 times in a mirror. I don't know. Doesn't matter. Same stuff. But at that same time, there was a thing called The Tall Man. Okay, there was a movie called The Tall Man. And everyone went to go see it thinking it was the Slender Man movie. Everyone thought that the way it was promoted, the way it was presented, the way it was advertised, kind of made you think that, oh, this is a movie with a Slender Man sort of theme. And it turns out that and I'm spoiling this whole movie, but there is no bad guy in this movie. They're just abducting children from improper homes so that they can rehome them with better parents. It's like a weird underground railroad foster family connection where they would like take a child from one family, make that family think their child is dead, and then rehome them with a nicer family. And that was what that whole movie was about. And it was like, what the, huh? It's like, okay, but that's not what I signed up for. That's a different kind of movie than what I signed up for. You know, that's a bait and switch. You know, that's not just a twist. We're fully in a different genre of movie now. So that I don't know. Have you ever had any experience with that where you went to go see one movie and then it was not as advertised or not as presented?
It's hard to say because a lot of the times I kind of praise movies that do that. Only because I hate where trailers spoil everything. I know we've had an entire episode that we talk about that, but where you have the opposite, where the trailer promotes the movie as something completely different, and you go and you have this expectation and it's completely not what you were expecting because the trailers reversed it. And I actually kind of like that because I kind of hate it when things get ruined before you go into the movie.
Yeah, okay.
You know?
All right, I can accept that. I guess we were just talking about how everyone knows how these movies are going to turn out because of the tropes and the genre rules and all of the cliches. So at a certain point, you kind of have to turn those cliches on their ears so that you even can never be
in seats.
Get asses in the seats and actually surprise people with any story that you're going to tell. So,
although the worst one is I'm pretty sure that Deadpool is not a romantic love story that they've been promoting that as. They had the billboards and everything. Although that was brilliant marketing. They marketed that as every genre of film when that came out.
Yeah. We talked about this on the podcast, but I always think about Jerry Maguire, where they literally had like multiple campaigns going at the same time, where it's like they advertised it as a heartwarming drama, they advertised it as a sports movie, they advertised it as a comedy, and depending on what cable channel you were watching, if you were watching Lifetime, you were seeing a totally different movie advertised than the movie they were showing people who were watching ESPN or whatever. Mm-hmm. It's like whatever channel you were on, they had a different version of how that movie was advertised, which is really kind of a weird, again, you're getting butts in the seats, but they're all expecting a different movie. I don't know. I mean, I guess there is some way to applaud them, but I suppose the genre thing is kind of a trap,
right? Sometimes
too, because people who are fans of genre movies, they kind of want to see the same movie over and over again. Which is not really a fun expectation necessarily for a typical viewer who isn't a genre fan, and maybe not a fun expectation of a filmmaker who might get tired of just making the same movie over and over again to appease the demand of whatever the fans want. Mm-hmm. I don't know. I've never been in that position to where I feel like I have to keep doing the same thing. I mean, I do the same thing a lot on my show. I mean, I do the same thing a lot on Cinema Insomnia because I personally feel like 50% of my show needs to kind of be the same because there's a traditional aspect of it.
Right.
And maybe 50% of my show needs to be different so that there's still surprises left. So I try to strike the balance between what the audience expects from a genre standpoint and what I where I want to take it from a creative standpoint. And I think that's the mix that every creative person has to come up with, right? What the audience is expecting and wants versus what creatively you want to do, right?
Sure.
What did you want to do creatively with this podcast? Because I feel like we've fallen off the trail. Can we get back from here? If we fallen into the darkness? Are we in the woods? How far are we in the woods?
What do we have to do to appease the gods? I think we have to go to break in order to appease the gods.
All right. Well, all of you, it's time for the sacrifice.
For Halloween, Toys R Us doesn't miss a trick, and the prices are a treat. We've got costumes for all Toys R Us kids, even grown-ups, and loads of candy, makeup, masks, and more. Toys R Us will make your Halloween supernatural.
Come in and join us for the very last segment of our Schlocktober Spookabration Fest Part 2. Oh, wow. Was that like, were you swallowing mucus?
No, that was Bobcat Goldthwait. Isn't he scary? Isn't he a horror creature?
Wow, that was terrifying. No, it was scary. Bobcat Goldthwait. So we're getting kind of in the modern horror genres. You had some thoughts of some more modern horror movies that we could talk about.
Like shouldn't we do like some bodily horror, like like the Saw movies, Hostel, all that kind of genre, more modern.
Actually, stuff? Paul, I have to stop you right there. That is not body horror or bodily horror.
Bodily horror. I mean, isn't mutilation consider that kind of stuff?
Body horror? No. Body horror, as I understand it, it almost comes directly from the kind of movies that David Cronenberg makes, like, The Fly, where it's like your whole body's metamorphosizing, or, Videodrome, or Scanners. Dead Ringers, these movies where you've got. Did you ever see Existenz? Have you seen that movie?
No.
They're playing like a video game, and it's almost organic, where it's like it's super gross. I don't know. But yeah, those things are like where something's physically happening to your body, and you're physically changing. And I think
a saw is physically changing your body. I mean,
yeah, that's true.
You can't argue that.
I would classify those movies as like Hostel, and those movies would be, that kind of falls into what they call, and it's kind of not a nice term, but torture porn. Right? Where you kind of just are putting these characters, like I would even say Centipede, Human Centipede is in that, where you've got these characters who are like crying and holding hands and slowly dying over a long period of time. It's just excruciating. It's just like absolutely. I don't understand those movies at all, because it's like, how like the Tom Hanks, like, there's no crying in baseball.
Mm-hmm. There's no crying in Human Centipede.
There's a lot of crying in Human Centipede. That's the problem. I just don't like crying in my horror movies. I kind of feel like if you're just suffering, you're doing it wrong. It can't just be about suffering. It just can't be about murder. Horror is the anticipation of something scary, or feeling a scary atmosphere, or there being, and I kind of like there to be a little bit of a supernatural element, because I do feel like horror has a mythic quality to it. But a lot of what stands in for horror are kind of like these, I would call them more like exploitation films or crime-related films, where it's just characters who are just being tortured and mutilated. and there's no sort of not a lot of imagination to it. Although I guess Saw had a lot of imagination in the gimmicks. They kind of have a Dr. Phibes sort of situation where he's creating these impossible, infernal situations that you have to figure your way out of, right? You can either, to get the key that's in the, you got to saw your leg off to get the key to unlock your foot so you don't have to saw your leg off.
Right.
I don't know.
Is that so I guess like we have Saw in this universe. I guess in Star Trek, would it be like Kobayashi Maru the movie?
The no-win scenario. Yes, I like it. Yeah, hopefully Star Trek doesn't go full torture porn, although I feel like they're trying to dumb down Star Trek.
Well, I mean, that would be their in-universe horror movie. You know,
yeah.
For their in-universe, they wouldn't be seeing Saw. They would be seeing Kobayashi Maru.
Oh, okay. It would be an in-universe. You're not proposing a whole separate horror version.
Well, I mean, if CBS is listening,
Trek.
please don't sue.
What about movies?
What about movies about like what about like the Purge and stuff? Where would you classify that kind of stuff?
Those are documentaries. That's the thing is that like those movies, I don't know. I mean, I don't kill people because there are laws telling me that I shouldn't or that I can't.
Then why do you kill people?
Because it's fun, Paul. I mean, what other reason is there? Just for the fun of it.
You're not
just
wrong.
For the fun.
Here, swallow this key. I'm gonna lock your buddy over there, and at 9:00 we're gonna murder your neighbors because it's legal.
Because it's legal. That's right. It's legal. So it's finally legal to murder. I'm gonna slay all of my neighbors. I don't know. I mean, I guess it's interesting. It shows. I mean, that movie's not fun at all for me to watch right now because I mean the amount of unbridled hatred that's going on in this country. I don't know if I really need to be reminded of any of that. I feel like the same way, even though I really like Dark Mirror, which is a really kind of intelligent show, it's like I know technology is destroying our culture and that there's a lot of evil in our culture, and I don't know if I need to be reminded of that.
Right. Well, they're on hiatus, and the rumor is that they're on hiatus because the show writer can't really create anything that's any different than what we're going through right now.
Yeah, or any worse, right?
Right.
I mean, that's the problem. We were talking about this with our episode about humor and comedy and satire. It's like, it used to be that satire, you would take whatever's happening in reality and just twist it like 20 more degrees. Just put 25%. It over the 25%. Put it over the top to kind of illustrate your point. But unfortunately, we're already maxed out. There's, I can't make anything 25% stranger than it already is. Mm-hmm. So, so I feel like those guys who were, having these dark, edgy morality plays where they're trying to show us how nasty we are as a society, those guys are probably looking for jobs. They're probably checking the want ads right now because I think things have gotten to such a bizarre degree, that it's probably hard to write that kind of cautionary tale right now, other than, I hate this, I hate this, I hate this, I hate this, I hate this.
Oh, so you've read the YouTube comments on the channel.
Yes, that's right. I did like Dark Mirror though.
I liked it too.
I'm just not always in the mood to go there, And I haven't seen the new Twilight Zone. Have you seen those?
I've only seen the one that was free.
Yeah. And what did you think of it?
Wasn't really too terribly impressed.
Yeah. I mean, I did like some of the other things. I guess we can talk a little bit about Us.
Never saw it, but I've seen I've seen a walkthrough of it, or not a walkthrough, but a.
What was the other one?
Summary.
What was the first one? Because I saw Us, but I didn't see the first film that the guy from Key and Peele made.
Yeah.
Which was what? Yeah. All right. Aaron's me to leave. No.
Leave the
didn't
keys
see
on the
Get
counter
Out,
on the
but
way
I did
out.
see Us, and I liked Us. I mean, I thought it was imaginative and had some legit scares in it, and was, you know, I was impressed with how it was made and how it was shot, and I was impressed with how it was acted, and I thought it reminded me, it had a definite kind of Twilight Zone-ish
Right.
feel to it.
I mean, that kind of led to the Twilight Zone, didn't it? Those
probably,
two movies.
I guess those two movies led to the Twilight Zone. I just feel like, you know, Rod Serling, I don't feel like Rod Serling came out of nowhere. He kind of created that reputation, you know.
Right.
So I think it's really hard to just, you know, on the strength of two movies, assign them that role of being the next Rod Serling. Just like when they did that with M. Night Shyamalan, I guess. I don't know how to pronounce his last name. Do you know how to pronounce?
Ding Dong.
Shyamalama Ding Dong. Everyone goes there. That poor guy. But M. Night Shyamalan, who's a local here in Pennsylvania,
Philadelphia.
You know, I think that it was probably very dangerous and it probably was great for him in the beginning of his career to be assigned that, you know, people thinking he's the next Alfred Hitchcock.
Right.
But then you've got to live up to that, you know?
Every movie has to have a twist.
And that's too much to live up to, I think. You know, I mean, Alfred Hitchcock didn't have to live up to being the next Alfred Hitchcock. He just made a bunch of films, and then at a certain point, people kind of looked back at his career and went, "Oh, okay, yeah, this guy has got a thing. He's the master of suspense." You know, so you know, a lot of times these new guys up and coming, it's like they give them that brand of here's this unbridled genius, and then they've got to somehow, you know, everyone is watching their third movie with this scrutiny that it's got to be total genius, or or that person's washed up.
It's all got to live up to Sixth Sense now. If it doesn't live up to Sixth Sense, you're a hack.
You're a has-been, yeah. So, you know, I don't know. I mean, I don't know. I don't know.
Do you know?
I do know, but I don't know.
Okay.
Who knows what they know? I know what I don't know, and I don't know a lot. I know what I don't know, and that's almost everything. I don't know much, but I do know this. I do love movies. I do love Halloween movies. I don't want people to stop making movies. You know, I think that there's like a common thing right now where it's like it's like well, why did they make that movie? You know, they shouldn't have made it. It's like, you know, I guess you shouldn't have watched it, you know? I don't know if it's necessary for people to not do things, you know? I think that it is the audience's prerogative to like it or not, or enjoy it or don't, you know? But, you know, I feel like if everyone was afraid of criticism, nothing would ever get made. You know, it's like, okay, yeah, they could have just done nothing and avoided your criticism, but then they would have done nothing. You know, there are people in their lives that they want to make movies, they want to tell stories, they want to, you know, create these adventures, and maybe it doesn't work, and who's that a heartache for? The person who made it has to bear that, where it's like, wow, we put all this effort into this and it didn't quite come together, but we tried, and you know, we'll make another movie, and maybe that'll be the one that really works, you know? And then there are some directors who stick by their guns, who are like, okay, this wasn't a success financially, but I'm proud of the movie that I made, and, you know, I got a chance to tell the story I wanted to tell, you know? But I do feel like as fans, I think we have the sense of entitlement where it's like we want to be the ones green lighting the projects, and we want to be the ones shutting them down.
About time. You know, Phil just kept waking up, and it was the same day over and over and over, but it's about time that he finally changed his ways and he can finally go home to Pittsburgh.
Are you watching Groundhog Day in the middle of our spooktacular? Paul.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I guess that was our predictable trope for the evening. So Paul, are we almost done with this? Because you're already obviously already checked out.
I've been done with this about an hour ago. I don't know about the gods or the fans or whomever's listening to this.
We don't know if we appeased anybody or what.
Is this the point where Sigourney Weaver comes out and tells us what's going on?
Sigourney Weaver tells us to strip down to our underwear.
I guess. And sacrifice the virgin.
I hope you have a nice Halloween, Paul. Is there any kind of candy that you were looking forward to?
What's the worst candy that people hate? Candy corn, right?
I like candy corn, and I always get crap for it. Melissa Tapley bought me a 3-pound bag of candy corn, by the way.
3-pound bag of coma corn.
But I guess, you don't really eat candy, do you, Paul?
Oh, I eat candy.
Oh, you do?
I'm not supposed to, but I eat candy.
Oh, okay.
It's not that I'm not supposed to. It's just moderation.
Yes. Do you have a favorite, though?
I do. I like candy corn.
Oh, you do like candy corn?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. I don't know. Candy corn's got that rep suddenly like pineapple pizza.
You have been listening to the Sleepless Nights podcast, or should we say pODDcast, emphasis on the odd. Our theme is by Mars Homeworld at Dead House Music. Our opening announcement is by Ophelia Necro. She does a radio show called Suicide Watch. And you can reach Mr. Lobo at cinemainsomnia.com, or find me on YouTube. YouTube/Mr. Lobo, MISTERLOBO. Mr. Lobo on Facebook, Facebook/MR.LOBO, or on Twitter, at Mr. Lobo, MISTERLOBO.
Or you can find myself, Paul Sanders, or better known as Bestow TV, at bestow.tv, on YouTube /BestowTV, on Twitter at BestowProd, PROD, and on Facebook, Bestow TV.
If you want to place an advertisement with this podcast, and gosh, why wouldn't you? We could be talking about you right now. Contact us, Mr. Lobo at cinemainsomnia.com. That's MRLOBO @ CINEMAINSOMNIA.com. Or support us on Patreon. Patreon supporters get to hear this podcast before anyone else, and a lot of other great stuff, right, Paul?
Sure.
Because you get it better than that, right? So come join the fun at
Patreon.com/Sleepless Nights Podcast.
That's
Patreon.com/Sleepless Nights Podcast.
Please stay up with us next week for another Sleepless Nights podcast. Or should we say, pODDcast. The best thing about being an insomniac is never having to say goodnight.
Pumpkin spice
Good night.
is delicious. Like I had a pumpkin spice coffee this morning.